Right, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our webinar this morning. We're going to be talking about how we can transform the accounts payable automation process for growing businesses. This is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I've seen some massive change, and I've got some great app partners with us today to talk about how their solutions will make our processes efficient and streamlined as possible. So just like to make some introductions. I'm Frances Kay. I'm a co-founder and director of App Advisory Plus, but I also have another hat in terms of Farnell Clark, our accountancy practice. I've worked in industry at the very beginning of my career 20 odd years ago. So I have seen the change in technology. I've seen the habits that we've had in terms of how we actually do bookkeeping, all the way from getting a cost approved to making those payments. So I've loved seeing the technology change, and in Farnell Clark, one of our teams has been able to really harness this and offer more services to our clients and basically take away the headache of their accounts payable team. So I'd like to introduce Alex from ApprovalMax, if you'd like to say hello.
Sure. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Alex Kesselman. I'm a solutions engineer at ApprovalMax. And for the past 7 years, my main role was to listen to our customers, understand what are their challenges within both accounts payable and accounts receivable process, and finding the best possible solution for their business. So thank you for having me here, and over to you, Frankie.
All right. So then we've also got Paul from Dext. So nice to see you, Paul.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Really nice to be taking part in this discussion this morning. For those who have not met me before, I'm our VP of Accounting and Product Strategy at Dext. I've been at Dext for about 2.5 years now, but prior to that, I was in practice for just over 20 years, where I, with many of my clients, was heavily involved in, from the early days of being a trainee accountant, doing all of the processing, all the reconciling, all the way through to a partner in the firm where I was head of digital strategy.
So you've seen quite a change as well then over the few years.
I've seen, yeah, a lot.
And then over to you, Thomas from Airwallex.
And yeah, thank you very much for having me, Francis. So I'm actually a relatively recent joiner, joined Airwallex earlier this year to run our channel partnerships across EMEA. So what that really means in practice is working with a lot of accounting partners, but we also work with legal firms, consultants, and financial advisory firms. I'm mindful also that some on the call may not be familiar with Airwallex itself, so keen to just give a quick overview of the business as well. So for those that aren't familiar, Airwallex is a global payments company. We were founded in Melbourne in 2015. We've now grown to 1,400 employees across 20 locations. I think just to kind of maybe give a little more context here, just want to very quickly talk about who we can help, how we can help them, and also why we can help them. So look, we have the capabilities to support businesses of all sizes. That can be from the very early stage and high growth companies to global multinational businesses. I think what's critical here though is that these businesses typically they're looking to scale globally. In terms of how we can help, Airwallex is an end-to-end platform. So what that means really is that, in 3 ways we can help. So we can help with the collection of funds, and that's through our multi-currency accounts or by enabling online payments. And that's through the management of funds. And finally, actually, it's through sending or spending funds. So I think that's something that we'll dive into in a lot more detail in this session. And just lastly, just wanted to say on why we're actually able to do that. I think that, over the last 8 years, what we've done is we've built the financial infrastructure to be able to enable collection management and spend. And so that involves 50+ licenses and also partnerships with a number of leading financial institutions around the world.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So just before we sort of jump into it, the way we're going to structure it is that we're going to take the life cycle of a cost, as I mentioned, at the beginning, so from getting approval all the way to payment. And when I was preparing for this webinar, I kind of reflected back on what was happening, let's say 20 years ago. And I remember I would be sent out to a client's premises. I'd sit there all day. I'd be given a whole wad of paperwork. And I also used to be given a stamp, which I loved. different colors depending on what I was stamping. And then potentially I'd have to write the nominal code on the piece of paper that I coded it to. I'd then have to go get it approved and get somebody signing it. And then I also remember one client where I actually would then make payments with check. So, and I used to fill a whole checkbook and a half each time I went writing these out. So obviously checks, we can just put that behind us and move forward. But it's just really, really interesting to see how much it's changed. And actually in the last few years, and especially working at Farnell Clark, things like having Dext in place just changed the way I used to work, because I used to be old school Sage. So if we go back to the life cycle of a cost in a business, the first area we want to go back to is what problems do we have in terms of getting pre-approval of a purchase. So you've got a growing team, you need to buy whatever it is, stationery, cost of goods, order some services. We need to address that problem of actually getting it approved before it's committed for. So Alex, do you want to jump in here and just talk about how ApprovalMax can sort or assist in that part of it?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for this question. Actually, it's great that you've mentioned that back in the days, you used to do all the manual work yourself and using checks. Weirdly, some of the countries are still using checks. Back in when I used to live in Israel, I used to pay for my apartments with checks, and they're still in use a lot. Therefore, it's not yet gone. Hopefully, it will be someday in the future. But actually, in terms of the purchase order side, it is just a part of the whole process. It's just the mechanics. What I want to tell you may be a bit of a background, maybe a bit off topic, a little story that just happened to me a week ago. I've been to Cairo, Egypt. And if you've never been to Cairo, I can describe that in just one word. It's chaos, complete chaos. So I wanted to take an Uber scooter, which is just like a little motorcycle, and go to the pyramids of Giza. To tell you the truth, the driver that came to pick me up was, of course, without the helmet. And for the 30 minutes that we were driving to these pyramids, I was praying for my life. I was literally, every second was just thinking about, hopefully I won't die today. And luckily I've survived, though statistically, the statistics is not on my side. But when I came to these pyramids, I thought to myself, it actually happens all the way in the business world, even these days. A lot of companies, hundreds of thousands of companies going bankrupt every year simply because they don't have a basic business and financial hygiene. So they don't have any spend control. They don't have any systems in place that will prevent fraud. And sometimes it's just a cash flow management problem. Sometimes it's a fraud problems, but there is so many things that you can actually fix in advance by adding some of the additional tools on top of that. So by saying that, ApprovalMax will actually add, especially if we're talking about on the purchase order side, this first checkpoint control, where before we've actually committed to the spend, we can see what services we're going to purchase in the future, rather than just paying for whatever we never needed in the first place. And then you can create this multi-step and multi-tiered approval system where everyone from your team, all of your decision makers will know exactly what you're committing for and what type of things, what type of services and goods you're going to receive in the future. So that is just one part of this big old process, because everything that goes after that, like bill approval process, budgets, and so on, will go on top of that. So then we'll have a pure control under each and every approval step.
What I particularly like as well is what I find with our clients that come to us, they might not need purchase orders to start with, because there might be a couple of people that are the owners that are growing it, but they soon want to be able to delegate and trust their sort of growing management leadership team. And I think by being able to sort of use the routing process in ApprovalMax and put those workflows to say, right, Bob orders this, and only Jim needs to approve it. And if it's over £1,000, let's go to the owner. So that's really, really powerful in terms of being able to create that matrix. And in terms of obviously approving these purchase orders, it's really easy, right? In terms of using the app or getting notifications.
One thing about it, like a real example from one of our customers, it's a family-owned business and they are managing yachts in Malta. So their crew on the boats, they're purchasing lots of stuff, fuel, some materials for their boats, and so on, so on. So before that, the way they process the whole thing, they were just purchasing things, whatever they need. And sometimes it might be over the budget. Sometimes it might be just things that they really don't need. And this family, though it's quite a small business, but they were struggling with that because they've already need to pay money for the things that were already bought and for the services that they already received. And even though they might not need it. So by adding this additional control before you've committed to something makes it super easy. And your crew, they can make these purchase orders within the mobile app, submit that within just a couple of seconds. It goes straight away into the family. They will see what's exactly they're committing for. They will either approve it or reject. So everyone have a clear visibility on what is actually going on within the business. And you can easily control your money and your cash flow before you've spent any money.
And if we really take it at a very basic level, the actual admin behind chasing something to be approved can be it can just take hours. And especially if you're blocking people's emails, like, can you approve this? And then you wait for a reply and you don't get when you chase it. Again, it's just so much time wasted when it can just have the automation, right? In terms of reminding people to approve.
It reminds me of another example from the practice. A client of ours from South Africa, they are in the agriculture sector. So it took them about 2 weeks to approve a single document, simply because they have thousands of people working for them and it's different locations, remote locations. Sometimes they would raise the PO maybe during the working day, submit it for approval. Then next day they will receive an email back saying that something is wrong. They will change things, submit it again. So it's a infinite cycle of going back and forth with the emails. So rather than doing that and approving a single invoice for 2 weeks, you can add some tools which will help you do that not within days or weeks, but just within minutes and hours. So it makes it perfect sense that you can just simply save your time and focus on something meaningful on your actual work rather than sending these emails back and forth.
What I also like is not because I'm a nasty person, but there's the ability to run a report in ApprovalMax that shows how long somebody takes to approve on average. So if you've got one person who just never does anything on time, there's always that sort of evidence to be able to come to them and say, come on, let's make this bit better for the team.
That's true. That's a great tool for managers to keep track on whether their staff are actually doing their work on time and put that into KPIs. Like you have to approve everything within 5 minutes.
Exactly. And the other element as well on here that's really important is where you've just said about the budget. So again, growing companies, they should be having budgets to keep them online throughout the year. And just to be told at the end of the month, oh, you've gone over, in the management accounts, it's kind of not very useful. So again, what we found is the budget checking within ApprovalMax is amazing. So again, somebody submits a purchase order, the approver can then see what the budget is and what the impact is, right?
That is correct. So the budget checking is actually mainly about the convenience, though it's another layer of these financial controls, but it's made just for users to make their approval decisions on time. Because we know we are all super busy and a lot of people are quite actually lazy. So if you don't have quick access to your budget straight away when you're doing your approval decision, then you would probably do that by the intuition, hoping that you're still in line with the budgets. So they will approve it. And then by the end of the year, by the end of the month, they will realize that they are over the budget completely. So what this feature allows you to do is just in real time, you can straight away compare whatever you have on the budgets back in your Xero account against the request that you're seeing now, both for purchase orders and for your bills, and really make your decisions driven by data rather than by your intuition. So you won't have any problems by the end of this financial year or something.
Absolutely. So if we then move on to, we've got the cost approved, now we've got to deal with the paperwork. And I guess there's a few things here is, do we ever get the paperwork sent to the finance team? And then it's, how do we actually get into the account system and sort of try and make that process, again, with less friction. So Paul, I'm going to move over to you for this side to talk about how Dext can help just make this less painful for us.
Yeah, I mean, with Dext Prepare, we have multiple methods in which you can get invoices into our system. And what that means is, one of the things I often talk about is the importance of trying to have real-time data collection. So uploading documents as close to the date that document has occurred as possible. Because for me, you know, when I was in practice, even now with lots of conversations I have with people, completeness of records is so important. And where you're not using an automated digital system, you know, and I can go back to my old days of doing bookkeeping, is where you've got paper records. And if you are approving paper records manually as well, they can sometimes sit on someone's desk for weeks on end. All of a sudden, you don't have completeness of records. As such, your purchase ledger isn't showing the true balance due to any particular supplier. That in turn can then have a knock-on effect on any reporting side of things as well. And often that would only come to light actually when, if we got a sort of a supplier statement and we did a supplier statement rec, and you can see that all of a sudden there were documents missing. And then you spend time chasing clients, and all of that just puts more pressure on the team. So with Dext, you know, you can email documents in, you can use the mobile app, you can use Fetch, you can manually upload documents. And the key is getting that information in, because once that information is in, you can then send it to ApprovalMax and you can get that invoice approved. You can publish it directly to the accounting software that you're using, and we integrate with, you know, a good 20 or so of the general ledgers. And this is where you've always got constant visibility and awareness. And then we go further and provide some insights as well in terms of how frequently information is coming through, and, you know, are you comfortable that everything is up to date as it should be? So by having this integrated end-to-end solution, it really makes a huge difference. And I know when I implemented, when I was still in practice, ApprovalMax at the time, because we'd had everything all the way through to payments, actually when you got to the payment part as well, the business owner had already seen the invoice. There was no surprises. There was no sort of, what's this for? They would often remember actually approving that purchase order, approving the invoice. So when it got to the payment side, that process was even easier. And you know, you could remove that step of, can you just go and get me that invoice? And then going through the file, finding a copy of the invoice. You've got a digital record of absolutely everything. So with Dext, you can really do it on the go, and it does come back to this sort of real-time data collection point, which will ultimately lead to more accurate, up-to-date reporting, and also an easier payment process as well, because you shouldn't have anything missing.
It's funny you mentioned about going and finding the paper document, because again, on those site visits I used to go on, I'd then spend a couple of hours filing. And obviously, if you're not in the office, that's a nightmare. And the beauty of it is obviously Dext then publishes a PDF into the likes of Xero. And we've actually had it where we've had like a VAT inspection, and the VAT inspector comes in, you just say, right, here's Xero. And I think he did his assessment in like 15 minutes because he could just see everything immediately. And he was like, well, shall we have a cup of tea? Because I've got, another, how much left to do here?
100%. And actually, before I left practice, I had a VAT inspection. It's exactly the same thing. It was just clicking on things. But, when you're looking at that completeness of records, if you've got everything digitalized, you know where everything is in the process, you know whether you've got invoices that haven't been recorded within the accounting system that you may need to accrue for. You could have unbilled purchase orders that you need to consider whether you need to put an accrual in, because you may have received the goods and services, but the invoices haven't come. Often the worst scenario is you just don't know what's missing. With purchases, it's out of your control, and that's why supply statements are often such an important part. But if you haven't got the invoice on the ledger or anywhere in the workflow, there's a good chance you're missing a liability, and as such you could be overstating profits, understating your liabilities. You could have a credit note, which makes it even worse in a way, that you could be paying a balance on the purchase ledger having not reflected a credit note that's come through, and as such are overpaying a supplier. So getting and having digital records right from the start of data capture all the way through is absolutely key to ensure you've got accurate and up-to-date numbers.
There's also, again, going back to ApprovalMax, a great report you can run for outstanding POs. So that month-end accrual is just really easy to do. In terms of the actual using of Dext, again, just to go back to the mechanics of it, what I really appreciate is that because we can put those supplier rules in, so, let's try to put a default, let's automate as much as we can. So I always buy my stationery from Ryman's, for instance, really obvious. But the knowledge that is then captured is really great if you've got team absences or team changes, right? Because the system is set up for the way that you work. And, there's always going to be some human interaction to do further analysis, but let's just get the basics sorted.
100%. Within Dext, you can add notes, you've got the audit trail, you've got all of the supplier rules, and there'll always be certain suppliers where the nature of the transaction never changes. So a utility bill will probably always go to heat and light or something equivalent. Accountancy invoices, your own sort of bills, will go to accountancy fees. This is where you can really bring in an extra layer of automation and ensure consistency, because team members do change, people progress. They may start off doing some bookkeeping, but as they move through to semi-senior and senior, there's a good chance they're going to do less bookkeeping. New team member coming through ensures that all of a sudden they're not posting something, motor expenses or directors' petrol receipts was always one which I always found whenever the team member changed. They would either post it to director's loan account or they'd post it to motor expenses. By bringing in these supplier rules can ensure a consistent approach as teams change.
Absolutely. And the other element that I want to talk to you guys about is staff expenses. Now, again, it's kind of one of those things that some people like to squirrel it away and submit a claim after 6 months because they think that's like their savings. I've had colleagues that do that. Obviously, that's really rubbish for the business because they don't know about this 6-month accumulating balance, and then they've got to pay it out potentially, maybe not a convenient time. So if we can just touch on how Dext can help with staff expenses, and then Thomas, I'll jump to you on your alternative solution.
Yeah, 100%. So you can set up employees within Dext, so they just have access just purely to the expenses functionality. They may be going out to see clients on an audit. So this could be your own team. It could be your clients who have individuals who are out and about. And with Dext, and particularly with the mobile app, you can now, you take a picture of any expenses you incur while you're out and about, and you can create that expense report within the app. That can then be sent for approval and then published to your accounting system. So you always have visibility of expenses not yet reimbursed, which, coming back to the point, something you may need to accrue for. So it's really, really easy on the mobile app. And we're continuing to expand that functionality further to make it easier for the users as well. But yeah, it's getting into the habit of just taking that picture and not really worrying about it, because Dext will do all of the extraction, the categorization, and we do have effortless expense reports as well, and it will create the expense report automatically for the user.
That is one of those things that people just dread doing, right? At the end of the month, like, right, I've got to do my spreadsheet, I've got to attach some receipts to it. And obviously this just eliminates that pain. So Thomas, if we can just talk about how Airwallex can sort of give a flip side to reimbursing employees.
For sure. I mean, look, another thing I'd call out here is I see it very much as a complementary solution. We're very big fans of Dext over here. Ultimately what we're trying to do here, I think, and this is all of us on this call, is improve what has historically been a very inefficient and time-consuming process. I think I've heard lots of different adjectives thrown around, but it's outdated. I think also you'll see poor visibility. There's risk to employers and to employees, actually. And the other thing as well, which I can touch upon, is that it can be very costly too. I think from an Airwallex perspective, and I mentioned at the start of this webinar how I think about our solution in sort of 3 pillars. There's the payments in, that's the collection piece. There's the management, and then there's the payments out. And so as you mentioned, what we can offer businesses, though, is a solution, a card solution. So we're a principal member of Visa. We can issue multi-currency Visa debit cards. So just to clarify, these are not prepaid cards. We can issue these are company or employee cards. The accompanying expense management tool that sits with that, though, I think will offer a bunch of advantages. So one is just having clear visibility in one financial platform. Another is being able to actually set transaction limits as an approver. So again, avoiding these approval headaches, or indeed these sort of unnecessary spending risks if people decide to, overspend on something. And then finally, also around the sort of like control and security piece, you can instantly create, cancel, or freeze these cards. The other thing I just wanted to touch upon is, and I alluded to this at the start of this call, is that I think really where we excel is in helping businesses scale globally. So if you think about the needs that you might have as a business when you're transacting internationally, what we can do, as I said, is issue these multi-currency cards. What that means is that you're not going to incur international transaction fees. And typically what would happen is those payments, when they're made, they're just going to be drawn from the relevant balances. So, you might have 5 different currency accounts, and when you're spending in, I don't know, euros, dollars, whatever it might be, they'll just draw from those balances. So, as I said, it becomes this kind of all-in-one solution, really.
And it's good. I think it's just always good, as you say, complementary to have those that you obviously do need to reimburse staff if they spend personally, but also to give them those cards. It does show an element of trust as well, doesn't it? Like if you're given a company card, you've made it, right? But it's...
Yeah, look, again, I think important distinction there between, as I said, there's the company cards, and typically that's going to be more suitable for the subscriptions that you're going to be paying out. There are other interesting use cases as well on that front. And then there's the employee piece. If, for example, you've got teams that are traveling regularly, they might be going to conferences, they need to be spending in different currencies. I think that's where this solution becomes really, really helpful. But look, ultimately, what I would say here is it just depends on the needs of the businesses and how it is that they see these solutions fitting within what they have in their existing infrastructure.
Another good use case of that, though, I imagine, is I'm sure everyone's had it where an annual subscription has gone out of their bank and they're like, oh, what is that? Like, who authorized that 5 years ago, whatever it was, who uses it? And actually, if you have those cards and you can just cancel them, you could perhaps have a card like for a subscription so that you've got real clear visibility on what you're paying.
Absolutely. And again, those are virtual cards that could be spun up very easily, and they could be one-time uses. So what we've seen, I mentioned this sort of interesting use cases, particularly when we work in the travel industry, for example, slightly different, but what you'll find is they'll have to make multiple supplier payments. And what they'll do is spin up these virtual cards, which are used once in order to make those payments. So again, it limits risk as well. But yeah, there are a number of ways that we can, as I said, we can use these to benefit businesses.
Lovely. Okay, so if I just refer to the sort of process so far. So we've got approval, we've had the paperwork, we've processed it. It comes to the point of paying, and this is then where we kind of you stop and go, oh, hold on, do we have the supplier bank details, right? Have we checked them to make sure they're legit? Have we got the right insurance for this supplier to be working on our behalf, potentially in like the construction industry? So there's loads of cases of just looking at making sure that we are paying the people that we should be and paying the right accounts. So again, back to you, Alex, in terms of how ApprovalMax can help. And I think what you said earlier is it's going back to the beginning, right? Let's sort it out at the start, and then it makes life easier later.
Exactly. And coming back to the original state, what I was talking about, the financial controls, when a lot of businesses going bankrupt without having any financial hygiene, this new solution, that's like the juicy part of today's discussion, this new solution actually finishes the cycle from end to end, from the entry point where we have Dext to automate the process of actually extracting the data from an invoice, all the way through approval process and all the way to the payment. So we have these financial controls in place, have different checkpoints where different people seeing or reviewing our incoming invoices, making sure that it's all correct, that the payment details are correct, that the amounts are correct, and then we proceed with the actual payment. But at the same time, it's all about the convenience, because we work with many different services, all of us working with many different services. We have many different logins, many different passwords, and sometimes it becomes really a pain in the back point, I'd say, to keep all of these passwords in our head and simply go from one system to another. What this solution does, it sort of combines everything within just one place, so you can automate the full process without leaving ApprovalMax in the first place. So you can add as many of your decision makers in one system without paying any additional charges, and then make this process from the very beginning, from the entry point, all the way to the end. I've seen already in the chat, Stephen asked if we're going to show the demos of the actual product. I will do that in a second.
That's the bit everyone's here for, right? I love a demo.
And yeah, and just to emphasize what Thomas said, we are actually using Airwallex ourselves internally. So I'm one of those blessed people who have a corporate credit card, a corporate card for whenever I'm traveling, I'm using that. So it's a great way to keep control over expenditure, and really it makes it super easy to reimburse and to send expenses into the app. It takes a couple of seconds to do that. So it's a great solution. And that's why we decided that maybe it would be a great time for us to partner and make this solution even better for maybe mid or large size businesses. All right, I think on that note, I can take over the screen and show you the way all three systems works in combination. So Frankie, if you could stop sharing your screen.
Sorry. Yes,
my screen.
I was totally ready.
Awesome. So you should be able to see my screen.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll start with the Dext part, because if we'll shrink out the whole process, we have the entry point where Dext takes over the extraction of data, though they have, of course, much more things behind the scenes. But today we'll be only talking about the OCR part, optical character recognition part. So the way it works, it's actually super, super simple. You can have different ways how you can import your invoices into the system. One way would be just simply drag and drop into the system and it will extract the data out of it. The other way would be, and I think it's a great way for you to share that with your suppliers, just simply send them an email address and they will be able to send their invoices into that email address, and it will be automatically sent into Dext where it's extracted. And then there's a third way, mainly for your employees and staff. They can just simply download a mobile app, snap a photo of the receipt or something like that, and it will extract the data automatically. So it's a very easy way how we can deal with that. And it's also been said already that you can really automate the process of extracting data from different suppliers. So though there are many OCR solutions on the market, but one thing about Dext that they have machine learning involved in the process. So more you're sending your invoices into the system, the better system becomes, and it learns from whatever you've sent before. It takes in consideration whatever suppliers being used, and it can apply some additional rules to that. So then maybe within a couple of days or weeks, your system becomes super fast and you can easily extract thousands and thousands of incoming invoices. Here I got one of the examples from ApprovalMax Germany GmbH. I've already set some supplier rules to that. So I know if it came from, let's say, from ApprovalMax, it should be assigned to the category code subscription, and it should go to my product department. So just like that, I can automate this process. So then I won't even need to think about it. Once it's all done, I'll just simply publish an invoice. And once it gets published, instantly it will appear in your ApprovalMax account. Now, we've finished with that part, with an entry point part. Now let's go into the ApprovalMax and see what ApprovalMax can do for you, for your organization. So what we're seeing here, it's all of our zero connected approval workflows. A workflow, it is nothing more than just a canvas of your organizational structure. So let's say I would like all of my incoming bills to go through one unified process. At first, they should go to one of my head of departments. If they've approved it, it should go to the next level of approvals, especially if the amount is higher than a certain limit. And then maybe it should go to the senior management. So if I have that idea in mind, it will be super easy to recreate it here into my ApprovalMax account. I'll just simply go into my approval workflow. I'll create as many approval steps as needed. Let's say this one will be our head of departments. This one will be our C-level approval. And then I will just simply add whoever should be approving under each and every approval step. So let's say for the first one, it will be Alison, Chris, Jim, John, and myself. And for the C-level approval, let's say it will be Veronica, and it will be, let's say, Tim. Now, the next part, and where the magic happens, we will go into our approval matrix, where we'll define what each and every user here can see and what they can approve. So each column that you're seeing here, they're all taken from your Xero file. So if you have a list of your suppliers back in Xero, we will pull these suppliers on board. And then you can decide that maybe Allison, she will be approving all the requests from the Amazon and Apple. While Chris, I'll be using one of two of my tracking categories. He will be approving all the bills from the department CSM. Jim will be approving everything from the finance department. John will be approving everything from the department marketing. And if account code matches advertising and marketing. And I will be approving all the bills from the product team. So just like that, within just a couple of seconds, I can assign specific rules per my users. Since these steps works in sequence, so now I can create a level of authorities. For the C-level approval side, I'll create a very simple rule. Only if the bill is over or equal to 50,000 pounds, only then these guys should be involved in the approval process. So now we have a hierarchy. If we receive the bill, if it belongs to the marketing department, it will go to John for his approval. If amount is less than 50K, it will only stay under John approvals, and then it goes to Xero. Though if it's over than 50K, it will first go to John. Once he'll approve that, it will go to the C-level approval, where both Tim and Veronica will need to approve it before it will hit our Xero organization. So just like that, we've built a two-step approval process. Some customers want to keep it super simple. They just create one approval step. Some want to make it a super complex workflow, and you can create unlimited amount of these approval steps. That's very configurable, and you have really any possibility to create a workflow of any complexity. Now, once it's all done, let me just confirm that all the things are here. I'll restart the jobs because all of the requests, all the bills from Dext already came to my ApprovalMax account. Therefore, I will just restart my workflow. So now we will take a look on the way it will look like for our users, for our decision makers. So here I have two bills. The one that I've sent previously from Xero, the one that I've sent now from Dext. So on the right side of the screen, I will find all the relevant details about what I'm actually approving. So if, for example, I have a duplicate bill and I've sent two bills of the same amount to the same supplier, it will flag me that I have a duplicate bill. Moreover, here on the bottom of the screen, we will find our actual line items, what we're approving. We have our buttons approve and reject. We can see what exactly we're approving. If you've sent any attachments along the way, you'll be able to see those attachments either in side-by-side mode or in a full screen mode to make it easier for your approvers. All the way to the bottom of the screen, we will find our budget check-in feature. So if you keep your budgets in Xero Budget Manager, you can enable a budget check-in feature, and we will check which tracking category is being used and which account code is being used. And we will show you only the budget that corresponds to the details here. So this one is for product team, for account code general expenses. So I can straight away see what is my remaining budget. I can see what's the impact of the bill that I'm approving right now, and I can see what's the status of that budget. Then all the way to the bottom, I will find my actual approval workflow. I can see that this request is under my name, under head of department step. It will skip the C-level approval because it's less than 50K. Therefore, I will be the only one to approve such bill. So let's go ahead and approve it. Now, once it's approved, it's now automatically sent into your Xero file under awaiting payment state. So we're pretty much finished with that part of the job. We've approved the bill. Now, when it comes to Airwallex, since now we have this direct integration, there is really no need for you to leave the system. You can make your payments just straight away from your ApprovalMax account. And for that, I'm happy to show you the way this new Airwallex batch payment workflow works. If I'll take a look inside, we'll notice that it looks quite the same. We have people who are allowed to create batch payments. You can have as many users as you want to, and you can assign them to a very specific criteria, maybe based on the bank account, which is taken from your Xero or Airwallex accounts, from your supplier, and you can allow your users to create beneficiaries. So it might be that some of them will be using already existing ones, but some other users will be able to create new beneficiaries here within ApprovalMax itself. Now, the right side of the screen, that's where we're creating our approval steps. Again, just like we've seen before, we have, in my example, I have two people, Jim approving everything that is less than 5,000 pounds for a bank account, I think for USD dollars, and I'll be approving everything else, excluding this USD account. But also, there is another thing. So this additional step here, which is the actual payment side. So we can provide a list of payers, those who will be actually allowed to pay for your batches here within ApprovalMax. they have to have two-factor authentication enabled in order to pay for that. And they will be able to do that here within the ApprovalMax account. So what I'll do now, I'll create a new batch and I will select this bill that we've just approved. So let's say it's going to be this bill 005 from ApprovalMax German GmbH. But you can add as many bills as you want to. There is really no limitation on that. So once I have a batch already here created, I can provide what should be the beneficiary per each and every of my line items. And that actually makes it super easy for those batch creators, for accountants, to add everything in one go, provide different beneficiaries per different bills. Let's say for this one, I will use GBP local. For this one, I will use, let's say, well, again, the same one. I can use different source currencies. Let's say for this one, it will be Australian dollars, and this one will be euro. Provide the purpose, which is taken from your Airwallex account, and then provide what should be the zero bank account. So in our case, since we've selected source currency, it will take the bank account based on that source currency. Well, for euro, I don't have one, so let's use maybe, actually, let's use the Australian dollars again. Of course, if you have any attachments already provided to your bills, you will be able to compare your bills side by side and see if the beneficiary is actually correct, and then that you will pay to the relevant supplier. So you have these capabilities here. And if we're happy, if we're ready to submit it for approval, just click on submit for approval. And now it goes to one or many of our approvers. So at the moment, it is not yet sent for the actual payment. For the moment, we were just checking that all the details provided here are correct and that we are ready to send it to the person who will be making actual payments. If everything is fine, I'll click on approve. Now we'll find a new button called the Pay with Airwallex. So since I'm the payer, if I'll click on Pay with Airwallex, it will show me what's the balances are available for the source currency that we've selected. In our case, it's going to be both Australian dollars. So I will see how much money available for me and how much I will need to pay. Confirm payment, select two-factor authentication. Just give me a moment. Confirm. And now this payment is sent into Airwallex. So now Airwallex will process the payment. It will include the links for each and every transaction. So I can take a look on those transactions back in my Airwallex account, but also it will provide me with an audit report, which shows who exactly made the decision. Let me actually put that into full screen. Who actually made the decision, why they've made it, and when they've made it. So all of these details under each and every approval step is provided to you to have full control over your entry point and the exit point when you receive the data and when you actually made the payment. And all of that within just one system. And of course, you can build reports based on that information. Once this request will be processed by Airwallex, it will be reconciled in Xero. So the status will be changed from approved into paid, and we will receive that data back into our ApprovalMax account. So now we've sort of completed the cycle, not going anywhere except for ApprovalMax. And on that point, I'll stop sharing my screen and then over to you, Frankie.
Okay. So just on that, a question has just come through about saying, if we're using this stack, when is the first time the bill will arrive in Xero? So just to answer that, because that sort of fits well with the process, is that once it's been processed through Dext, it has a status that says awaiting approval, which then means it comes into Xero into that awaiting approval tab. You've obviously got draft, awaiting approval, awaiting payment, and paid. So that's the flow and when it will first hit into Xero. So you've always got visibility in Xero as well.
It's actually two ways. One way, the one that just Frankie described. The other way would be through our direct integration. So in that case, from Dext, it will go first into ApprovalMax. So it won't be showing in Xero at the moment. Only once these bills will get approved, only then they will appear under awaiting payment status back in Xero. So that is something for you to decide. You can use actually both of these options, whatever you prefer. It's just with direct integration, it's a bit quicker. So it goes straight away from Dext into ApprovalMax and it appears in just seconds rather than minutes.
Well, you're showing me up to be the slow way there, but that's my preference.
Francis,
that's totally fine.
Could I also just add, just to clarify, so from an Airwallex perspective, so in order to access that in-app, you do need to be an Airwallex customer. So you'd need to go through our KYC process, but just wanted to clarify that if it wasn't clear already.
That is correct. Yeah. And another note on that, it is, at least for now, works only for the UK businesses. So if you're a UK legal entity, then you will find all the benefits from using this integration. Hopefully sometime in the future, we'll also expand it to some other markets, but for now it's the UK only. I see that the question came in, does this work with QBO as well as Xero? Unfortunately, not at the moment. So that's the start of this big journey for us. And we are now watching and how the Xero with Airwallex and this combination of different apps will work. And later on, hopefully we'll expand that also on the QBO. But for now, it's only for Xero, only for the UK entities.
Lovely, thank you. So, I mean, I love this process because obviously we can, as an outsourced finance team, we can obviously do it remotely. For an in-house industry team, you've just got a really slick process, and the full audit history is really important as well. I think where you were showing those documents where it says, right, who approved the purchase in the first place, and all the way through, if you're a company that is audited, again, it's just really easy for them to be able to do their checks that they need to.
Absolutely. And moreover, in our reports, in case, let's say an example, we're coming to the end of the financial year, we need to provide all of the documentation to our auditors. You can just simply go to our reports and download the whole archive of the audit reports in just one go and provide that and send it by email to your auditor. So you don't even need to think about where these transactions came from, who approved them, because we covered you from the very, very beginning all the way to the end.
Absolutely. So another question's come in. Oh, sorry, Paul.
I was just going to add, because you make a good point on the outsourcing bit. There's more and more businesses are outsourcing their bookkeeping to their accountants to do with all of that. But it's the approvals which are absolutely critical, because there won't be many accountants or bookkeepers who are happy to make a payment or press that final button on behalf of their client. They'll happily process all of the invoices. They'll happily set up the payments. But it will be the client who makes that final decision, because they're the ones in control, often more in control of their working capital, their relationship with their supplier. They know what's going on. And I know when I was in practice, I certainly didn't want to make the payment. I would set up the payment. So by having these sort of comprehensive approval flows all the way through, gives ultimate flexibility and choice, and allows you to stay in control, but also ensures from a risk perspective, let's say, that it's the client who makes that final decision.
But also, I think if we go back to how it, again, like you're right, we didn't ever want to make payments. And equally, one of the biggest things was actually the admin to be put onto a client's bank account. I mean, banks would take forever. And then there'll be friction because we weren't able to provide what we said. Then perhaps we have somebody that moves team and doesn't need access anymore. So the actual admin is a nightmare. Secondly, we don't want to be on clients' bank accounts. So that kind of removes that. But also if you're a finance team, it's the same thing. You as a business owner want to reduce risk, want to reduce the number of people actually having access. And I appreciate that, some banks have got the higher approvals within. But even then, let's say we've had it in the past where we've uploaded a batch payment and it's not approved on time and then it expires. So the next day you're like, well, has that been paid? Why has it not gone through? And you have to re-upload it. Your accounts might be out of sync for a couple of days until you realize it's not gone through. And those little, again, it's just painful admin time and chasing that this just completely eliminates. So it's amazing. And in terms of the foreign currency, this is really new. Making sterling payments great, but being able to do this end to end for foreign currency is quite a game changer. From Thomas, from your experience, has there been anything that's been holding businesses back from doing this, or is it just because there's not been anything on the market?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think what you've alluded to absolutely has been, a big challenge. I think even more so if you think about needing, let's say you've got to make multiple payments cross border, there's multiple accounts that you'll then need to access. So the problem's just exacerbated. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing, as you pointed out, hasn't really been the solution on the market. What we truly believe here is we're marrying best-in-class approval workflows with best-in-class payments. And so that what we're solving for here is cross-border batch payments. I think one of the reasons why we believe that's the case on our side, on the payment side also, is just because of our global coverage. So we're talking about a few specific use cases and maybe in euros, Australian dollars. But the reality is that our global payouts will stretch to 150 different countries. And one of the reasons why we're able to save our clients a lot of time and cost is because we're often using local payment rails. So 90% of the payments that we're making are using local payment rails. So also, again, a big unlock there.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize on that. Though we are a software provider, but we're also a customer ourselves. We are the business ourselves. And one of the pain points for us was how we're going to pay our suppliers globally, because we are a global company. And we didn't want to pay all of these transaction fees simply, well, because they exist. We wanted to pay to our suppliers by using the local currency and keep our money in the local currency without paying these extra fees. And that's why we actually found Airwallex. And since they've managed all of our pain points, they resolved them, we decided maybe it might be a great partnership between us.
It works. The other experience I've had from Airwallex, just to touch on, was a client received US dollars and they wanted to appear local, if that's right terminology. So obviously by using Airwallex, they were able to create what would look like a local bank account for their customers to again have that global image to make them, well, just look appropriate for their customer base.
And look, I think, again, going back to these three pillars, that really touches on the sort of payments in. So as I said, you can open multi-currency accounts with us. It's a common problem that is brought to us by accounting firms saying we have businesses that are looking to, let's say, open a UK account and they've struggled elsewhere. And again, as you said, it's about, so e-commerce is a really good example of this, I think, where you may have multiple consumers wanting to transact in their own currencies. You're able to then match that, which that like-for-like settlement again is really, really critical.
Right. So I think we're coming to the sort of Q&A session anyway. There's one here just come through. So do we need to assign the nominal account code every time we book the invoices in Dext? And how can we add the supplier beneficiary account details? So if we take the first one, Paul, do you want to just address the nominal code for suppliers and how that's
no, you don't. I mean, you can, our machine learning will, after you've put in the nominal code once, it will remember anyway going forward. But even if you don't put in a nominal code, because we have an in excess of 300 million documents going through Dext every year, we can usually give a good idea of what the code is. And then you've got the supplier rule functionality as well. So you can set up a supplier rule, so it will always default to that nominal code for that particular supplier. The only areas I would often say don't use supplier rules is where the nature of the transaction can vary. So Amazon invoices or Tesco's, it could be fuel, it could be food, it could be station, it could be anything. And that's where you probably need an extra layer of reviewing. But for any supplier where the nature of the transaction doesn't really change, supplier rules is the easiest approach because it will always remember every time it goes through.
And I will add on this one. So especially for those transactions, let's say from Tesco or from Amazon, when you're not quite sure which one should be used, we can just simply apply a default one, submit it for approval into ApprovalMax, and then within the first approval step, you have the reviewer function. So you can change and amend those category codes on the fly within ApprovalMax itself and submit for the next stages.
Just also, you mentioned things like accountancy invoices. Well, it got to a point where we were like, hold on, why are we reviewing our invoices to our clients, for our clients in Dext? And obviously the beauty of it is you've got auto publish. So yes. Once you've set the default nominal code, obviously you can then just auto publish and we don't need to process our own invoices to our own clients. It's just a nonsense. So it's a great feature to have.
For maximum efficiency, I often call it no hands. You could use fetch, you could use auto categorization, and you could use auto publish. So the invoice comes in fully extracted all the way through, and it's you don't even need to look at it.
In terms of this question, just to finish the other part of it, Alex, can you just go through? There's two ways I want to look at this. The first one is how can we do that contact approval, i.e. let's get the supplier details approved in the first place. And then obviously where those details then sit afterwards. Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually what I see from the question. It's two sides of it. So the first one, when we want to add the new supplier into Xero in the first place. So we do have an extra workflow just for that process. You can give access to your users so they will be able to create new suppliers and they will be able to publish that into approval process, but only once they will be reviewed by the relevant team members, those who will be allowing such suppliers in the Xero in the first place. Only then they will appear in Xero. But that's only the first part of it. The second part of it regarding the actual beneficiary account details. So by default, we are taking them from your Airwallex account. So you can straight away select which beneficiary account details should be used for that particular bill. And at the same time, you can give access to some of your users to create them within ApprovalMax. So once they will create a new beneficiary, it will be automatically pushed through to Airwallex and then it will be created there. On top of that, we do have an additional filter. So let's say you've created a new beneficiary, you submitted the document for approval, and then someone made a change for that beneficiary. We will flag you that maybe it's some potential fraud involved. So then you will know that you probably need to double check what are these beneficiary details. So these are two major processes, one for adding new suppliers into Xero, the other one is for adding beneficiaries for Airwallex and then to make the actual payment.
Marvelous, good. So that is, hold on, I'm just going to check the chat because we've got multiple places. But I think that's all we've got coming through on the Q&A. So I just want to round up and say thank you very much to you three for joining me this morning. And obviously, if anyone would like to have further conversations, by all means, please do contact the guys and their details will be sent out after this webinar with the recording. So yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. And I hope you all have, oh, hold on. Somebody's coming late. Thanks, Luke, for your question. Is there anywhere I can see what the ApprovalMax Airwallex integration looks like?
Today's demo.
Okay.
But also I'd be more than happy. Let me actually send an email to chat. That is my email.
Personal direct email.
So I've sent it to everyone. Feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to arrange a one-on-one demo call with you, show you the way this integration works and how it can benefit your business.
Great. All right, there we go. I'll leave it there. And yeah, thank you very much and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.